Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. What a way to close out the week, man. You got the Green Bay Packers at home coming off of a brutal loss to the Panthers, and that's going to be at the front of everyone's minds, although it probably shouldn't be coming off the loss to the Panthers. But the Panthers just lost to the New Orleans Saints in Carolina yesterday, so you never know what's going to happen. Panthers are still laying 1.5 at home here. Eagles coming off of a bye week. It's 28 degrees at Lambeau Field. Greg, this is a good game on Monday night, but it wouldn't shock me if it went like 17-14 type game either. I'm having a real tough time with this one early on, and I just did the betting video, and I just kind of stared at the screen for a while like, how the hell does this game play out?
Yeah, so this is a game that I've had circled on my in general, just a game I've had circled is one that I've really wanted to watch for a while. I assume probably the same for you, although it's probably the same for all of the Eagles games. But coming into the season, I assumed these were going to be the two best teams in the NFC. That is after the Micah Parsons trade. I thought that these were the Eagles, the Packers, the two teams to beat in the NFC. Other teams have gotten in the mix too. The Packers and the Eagles, they've both been inconsistent at times, but I do think these are the two most talented teams in the NFC. And day yesterday that brought a lot of blowouts and not very good games. The last night's Sunday Night Football game was more of the same. I really feel good that this could be one of the more fun regular season games that actually feels like it brings some implications to the table.
Would you say the Green Bay Packers are more talented than the Seattle Seahawks or the LA Rams?
Yes, assuming that they are healthy, which is also something that hasn't really been the case so far this year. But yeah, if they have once they get Reed back and he's not dealing with any injuries, once you get Christian Watson a full go, he's been, out, and then even when he's played, he's been limited. So when I think they have everybody back and there aren't any restrictions on anybody, then yes, I do think so.
Okay. Man, what a weird day yesterday. Sam Darnold throws 12 times in that game. They just bludgeon Arizona. The Panthers, this isn't a huge surprise. They're not that good of a team, but they lose to the New Orleans Saints. The Bills lose to the Dolphins. And the Bills didn't just lose to the Dolphins. They got smoked by the Dolphins. They got smoked. Mm-hmm. And just so many games that got wildly out of hand. I think it was pretty predictable that Detroit goes into Landover, Maryland and handles the Washington Commanders. You know what I was wondering? I wanted to ask you this question. I was thinking about it last night. Do you think the way books move lines on off of sharp money, do you think they might be moving lines off of sharp money that used to be sharp, but is kind of like dinosaur style sharp money with the way lines or sides, specifically spreads, are evaluated these days? I can't help but wonder sometimes, when I see the line moving towards Washington in that game, I'm racking my brain. Why, what could it possibly be moving? What money could possibly be moving that Washington spread with Marcus Mariota against Dan Campbell and a highly, highly aggressive dude who clearly is not going to take his foot off the gas? I can't help but wonder sometimes.
I doubt it. I don't think you're going to like my answer, but there's just not really enough information to know. But I'd be pretty skeptical that books are just moving money based on people who are losing bettors that used to be winning bettors. And it's also only one game. It's just there's so many games that have weird outcomes that, let's say there was a bunch of sharp money on the Dolphins yesterday, then maybe the narrative would be different. Maybe there was. I didn't even look that much into which side people were betting. But I logically, I doubt it, but who knows? I don't have enough information.
I'm not just using that as a specific example, but it was just, you've seen a lot of these games where, I don't know, sometimes it feels like the imbalance of talent in the NFL is so much more dramatic than we've seen in the past. And that might just be recency bias, but there really feel like a lot of teams that are just dreadful now, where teams used to be bad, but it was they're bad, but they can hang in there from time to time. And it just feels at times now like there are no teams. There are some teams that just cannot hang. We'll see, but it's really one of these strange seasons where and I guess every season's like this, but yesterday really highlighted how, like, the Bills. I mean, what is going on with the Bills? Who are the Panthers? We have no clue who the Carolina Panthers are. I think that's a perfectly reasonable statement. You still have no clue who the Falcons are. And really, I don't know who the Colts are either. Like, they're finding ways to win games, but who are the Colts? So now we have a question, right? Who are the Green Bay Packers? I think today is the answer, right? If you come out of a loss to the Carolina Panthers, right, a home loss at Lambeau, and you lose 16-13, your offense is anemic through 60 minutes. If you come in and get the piss beat out of you today against the Philadelphia Eagles, they would fall to third place in the NFC North behind the Lions and behind, believe it or not, the Bears, because the Green Bay Packers tied the Dallas Cowboys earlier this season. I think this is a really big game for them. I think it still says a lot that they're favored at home, knowing that they're dealing with this litany of injuries and Tucker Kraft ACL injury. That says a lot to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I think it's a very good team on paper. I think the Eagles and the Packers, at least on paper, should be the two best teams in the NFC this year. Packers a little bit health pending because Tucker Kraft is out for the year. Mentioned the other pass catcher injuries that they've been dealing with. But it's also, it's so random week to week. Like, I like to look at the futures markets. The MVP market has been insane this year. There's a different favorite every single week. And if you gave me, I don't know how many guesses I would have had to where I would have landed on Matt Stafford was going to end up being the MVP favorite after yesterday's games. That was not something I would have expected on the bingo card.
No. He was coming. We didn't even know if he was going to play this season. Seriously, right? I mean, remember the back injury?
Before the season started, we had a point in time where all of the Rams skill position players, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and then Stafford himself, were plummeting in best ball drafts because there's this rumor like Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to be the Rams quarterback this year. Stafford isn't going to be able to play. And Stafford's having the best season of his career, like 41 years old or however old he is.
It's amazing. By the way, Jonathan Taylor should be Jonathan Taylor right now should be leading the MVP race.
Possibly. So I thought he was going to be favorited. So I did buy some shares of Kalshi on him yesterday. So I have him at plus 750 for MVP right now. Here's what it's at on FanDuel. You got Drake May and Matt Stafford at plus 300. Jonathan Taylor's plus 500. So you've got, just a few weeks ago, your top three MVP were Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Baker Mayfield. None of them in top three anymore. Totally new top three. Drake May, Matthew Stafford, Jonathan Taylor. Then you got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Sam Darnold. And Josh Allen has moved back ahead of Sam Darnold. But for a point in time yesterday, Darnold was ahead of Josh Allen. And Josh Allen had started the day at plus 150 as the MVP favorite. And midway through yesterday's games, he was sixth in the MVP odds.
It's amazing, isn't it? You're right. They're all over the place. The only reason I haven't bet Jonathan Taylor, and probably won't, is because if he still has the fourth shortest odds now, how the hell does he ever win it? The guy has 3+ touchdowns in 5 of his last 8 games. Absurd numbers. That 83-yard run he had yesterday in Berlin, was one of the sickest runs ever. He disappeared into the line, into the trenches, pops back out and goes 83 yards for a touchdown. Finishes with another 3, is once again instrumental in winning that game because Daniel Jones did not perform well, and still he's behind 3 other quarterbacks. It's just, God, that's tough. What does he have to score? What does he need? 7 more games with 3+ touchdowns to get there?
So maybe not quite to that extreme, but I do think if the season ended today, he would win MVP. It's just the odds are also a projection of what's going to happen going forward. And there's a lot of expectation that there's going to be a regression in terms of Jonathan Taylor's touchdowns. That's also one of the things that I like about the prediction markets is you could buy shares of a player and then you could sell some of them off over time. So it's not like you're just married to this one position that you have. Like you could buy a bunch of shares and then you could sell a bunch of them off. And then you just kind of have a free roll where you just hold whatever the difference is between what you made selling the share. So I've got I mean, I've got a handful of MVP positions now. I've got Jonathan Taylor. I have one on Patrick Mahomes. I've got a fade of Baker Mayfield for MVP. I'm probably going to fade Matthew Stafford now too and try to buy shares of it, because now you've gotten to a point where Stafford at rec books is 3-1 plus 250 when MVP. And I just don't think he should be. It's not to say he hasn't played really well. I just don't think the odds should be that short on him.
Yeah, I'm not betting Matthew Stafford at 3-1. Anyway, glad to have you guys here. Hopefully you had a better Sunday than I did. If you did, good for you. If you didn't, well, let's figure some things out for Monday Night Football. I mean, really, this is what were you going to say?
No, I was actually kind of surprised that, because I had a really good, not like really good, but pretty solidly profitable day yesterday. I had like a 20% profit. I was kind of curious what you were on that didn't go well.
I don't know, dude. I had a lot of Davis Mills and Nico stacks. That was my big stand. That was great. Probably just too much Rico Dowdle and not enough Travion Henderson, if I had to guess, because a lot of it was just like bubbling, you know. It wasn't horrible. I mean, I lost like 30%. It's not like I got cleaned out, but last week was great, really good. This week was not really good, but yeah, I felt like I was, honestly, when I went back and looked at it, I felt like I was on most of the right spots. You know, a lot of McBride, a lot of Kittle. I don't know. It's just a lot of, a ton of Devon Achane, a lot of Davis Mills, a lot of Nico Collins. All of my quarterbacks, it felt like, came through as well. But it did feel like the difference was if you had the Gibbs pairing with Devon Achane, or if you had the Travion Henderson pairing with Devon Achane, you were just set up for success. At the very least, like making your money back. I didn't have enough of that pairing, and that's what got me into trouble. And more specifically, Greg, I didn't have enough of that pairing in my power sweep lineups and my spies in the red zone. That's exactly what it was, looking back on it. It wasn't that my pool was bad. It was the pool in those specific builds.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, the other thing too that was really important for yesterday is you had to have a defense that scored a touchdown.
That's another thing. Yeah,
you had to. Like, yesterday was such an important defense slate where you had to have either the Seahawks defense or the Jets defense. And the Jets defense was the dumbest one ever. But I benefited from this. The Sims gave me like 12% of the Jets defense or something like that. But I was like, I didn't even want to play the Jets defense. I thought it was so dumb. I had ROI boosted Quinshon Judkins, and the Jets defense, they a kick and a punt return touchdown. I don't understand why special teams touchdowns count for the defense and special teams, because the Jets defense was really not good from a fantasy standpoint yesterday, but they were because the special teams scores 2 touchdowns. It was very stupid.
Well, we just shouldn't have defense, really. That's what it is. You just shouldn't have to play defenses for real. That's the long and short of it, because you could have a team that allows 3 points and finishes with fewer fantasy points than a team that allows 25. You know, it's a really weird dynamic, but anyway, let's get into it. Glad to have you guys here. If you don't mind, take a single second this morning, atone for your sins, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way. And of course, leave a comment down below if you're listening or watching after the fact. Same with you guys in podcast form. We know you're out there. We try and make this as listenable as possible for you, even though we show a lot of visuals on the screen on YouTube. Greg and I try and read everything off, read the comments off, make your life as easy as we can. And if you think we do, leave a rating and a review for the Stokastic podcast. Would go a long way. All right, ready to dive into this one? I'm telling you right now, this slate, I think, is going to be tough.
A lot of decisions to make. It's like the inverse of yesterday. Yesterday, if you guys played the Showdown slate, it was very hard to find people to like. This is the inverse. There's so many people to like.
And whenever you get these type of slates where like you have 4 guys at 10K plus, Hurts, Barkley, Jacobs, Love. Isn't that crazy that Jacobs and Barkley are the same price now? You have
if anything, it's crazy that Barkley is more expensive than Jacobs considering how it's gone for him this year.
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, Josh Jacobs has been wildly touchdown dependent, like insanely touchdown dependent. And I'm not saying that Barkley hasn't, you know, but Barkley still, I mean, I guess you're right. I guess you're right that they should be the same price, but it just feels weird to see something like that. It feels odd to see them essentially, neck and neck in salary. Barkley had a great game last time out, though. Tweaked something, came out. They were up by a lot of points. They didn't need to use him anymore. Had that big 65-yard touchdown run, reminiscent of what we saw last year. They are missing Cam Jurgens on the offensive line. And now you've got a very good defense for the Green Bay Packers as well. Very good on both sides. Jalen Phillips now in Philly to help that pass rush. He played under Vic Fangio in 2023 when he had his best season. No Tucker Kraft. But, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are just such wild cards week over week. And they can both pop off for absolutely a slate-breaking game where if you don't have one of those guys, you have no chance of winning. You could also have a game where if you have one or two of those guys, you have no chance of winning.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Devonta Smith have multiple massive games so far this year. And on the side of A.J. Brown, we've seen multiple really terrible games from him. Devonta Smith actually has gone over 110 yards in 2 of the last 4 games. And then everybody remembers A.J. Brown, some of those games at the beginning of the year where there was all kinds of rumors like, does he even want to be here because his workload was so low? And I think that you actually had one of the better bets on A.J. Brown the entire year, where week 3, you laddered him after he had 8 receiving yards week 1, only 27 receiving yards week 2. You ladder him in week 3 in a buy low spot. He goes over 100 receiving yards, and you start to think, oh, is A.J. Brown back on track? And then the next game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who do not have a great pass defense, he has 2 catches for 7 yards in that game in a pretty competitive 31-25 game. So, yeah, he has been all over the place. I do feel a little bit better overall about the security of Devonta Smith, but I mean, there's clearly a ceiling for A.J. Brown. He had 6 targets, 4 catches, 121 yards in that game against the Vikings, where Jalen Hurts seemingly could not miss throwing the deep balls downfield. But the Eagles have a lot of weapons, and it is hard to know on a week-to-week basis who is going to be the guy that has the big game.
It is. And for what it's worth, that game against Tampa was weird because it ended 31-25, but the Eagles were up by like 21 points at one point. Remember, that was the game that started off with the Eagles blocking the punt for a touchdown. Yeah. And then they scored a bunch, and then Tampa started making a comeback. But you know what? Brown still has more target. Brown has still been targeted more often than Devonta Smith this season. So there's that. I mean,
and Smith still has like twice as many receiving yards.
Yeah. Well, Smith played an additional game than A.J. Brown.
That's true.
And both of these guys can pop off for big games. I kind of like A.J. Brown in a spot like this, though, because I wonder, you have a good pass rush for the Green Bay Packers. They do have a good secondary, but A.J. Brown is one of the best in the league at just coming down with these 50-50 balls. Does Jalen Hurts just lean on him? Here's the thing, though. Jalen Hurts is so risk averse. He hates throwing those type of balls, right? I think he should throw more of them to guys like Devonta Smith that has spring-loaded legs, and to A.J. Brown, who has an incredible catch radius. It just all kind of leads me back to, do they just feed Saquon Barkley today? He has a 17.5 rushing attempts prop. It's going to be cold as hell out there. Is this a way to kind of negate that heavy Green Bay pass rush, which is one of the best in the league, especially since the acquisition of Micah Parsons? Like, does Barkley just get fed the rock a ton today? I know he hasn't had a good season. I do really like Saquon Barkley a lot today. I just think the volume has to be there. And looking at kind of a skeleton crew Green Bay Packers offense, I feel similarly about Josh Jacobs. And I could just have this game read fully wrong. And if that's the case, Greg, then we'll know. Like, we'll know pretty often or pretty early in the game. But it feels like something that sets up as both teams are not afraid to hammer the rock on the ground.
Could very well be the case. And I think that it would be a mistake by the Eagles if they didn't at least try to establish Barkley in the early going of the game, make that their first option, because like you said, it's been a very poor season for him. He went into the game against the Giants last week with 0 games averaging more than 5 yards per carry and 0 100-yard rushing games. And he destroyed the Giants. He had 150 yards on 14 carries. So without having a single game of more than 5 yards per carry and not having a single 100-yard rushing game, he put up 150 yards and nearly 11 yards per carry against the Giants. And that all started first touch of the entire game, 65 yards for a touchdown in that game. So if I'm them, I at least want to see, hey, what happened? Because Barkley was so key to the offense last year. He had over 2,000 yards and had one of the better running back seasons we've ever seen. And then for whatever reason, just hasn't existed at all this season until last week. So I think that the Eagles would be remiss if they didn't say, hey, is our run game back? Let's open the game with 2 carries to Barkley. Let's try to establish the run. And that's what I would be doing if I was in their situation. So I think that'll be their plan. That'll be their plan 1A. If it doesn't work, then they've got AJ Brown to go to. They got Devonta Smith. There are a lot of different ways that the Eagles could attack the Packers defense, but I think option 1A is going to be Barkley on the ground.
Do you want to know something really interesting that the Eagles did last time out? You guys will see this as probably as valuable as I do. The run game wasn't working earlier in the year. And one of the reasons why, at least this is what was kind of suspected, is that it was pretty obvious to know if they were running the ball when Jalen Hurts was under center, and they became very predictable. So what they ended up doing, because they run a lot out of the shotgun, last game, they ran 37% of their offensive plays from under center. And then what that meant is they become a lot less predictable. And you saw those big Barkley runs, whereas we didn't see any of them before. Now, this is just one wrinkle in a overarching game plan and scheme that I'm not smart enough to fully comprehend. But it does make sense that when you take a team like this and you start running more from under center, make the offense more unpredictable, Saquon Barkley can do a whole lot more when the opposing defense doesn't just know he's going to get the football. So if they did, in fact, change some things up and they are coming off of a bye, we might see some new wrinkles in this offense again. I honestly don't think that's out of the question, Greg. Now, does that help anybody today? Not really, because we don't know what we're expecting. But they still have a first-year offensive coordinator. They're still trying to figure things out. And they definitely figured something out against the Giants 2 weeks ago.
Could definitely be the case. It could also be a situation where the Giants are complete dog shit, and anything that happens against the Giants should be taken with a grain of salt. But if we're just talking about the pay-up options from this game as far as skill position players go, and I was kind of sorting around there by salary and by exposures and by captain exposures as well while you were talking there. If I'm picking just one skill position player to pay up for today, Jalen Hurts, will take him out of the mix. And so I'm just going to make it the skill position players. But I'm going to Saquon Barkley over Josh Jacobs, over AJ Brown, over Devonta Smith. And I'm picking one skill position player to pick to score the most fantasy points.
I wish that we could bet the amount of times the Eagles run the tush push today. Do you know why I say that?
What makes you say that?
Well, who was the team that that spearheaded getting the tush push banned?
Well, it didn't get banned. I know what you mean, but
well, of course it didn't get banned because of course what I'm saying is the Packers were the one that brought it to the tape. Yo, if you don't think Nick Sirianni is petty, you're crazy, dude.
But whenever they get into those third and short situations, they run it. Like, I don't think they're all of a sudden doing it. Like, they do it a ton.
They're going to run it from 3rd and 5.
You think they're just going to, here's what would be the funniest thing. Do they do it on their first play of the entire game? First and 10, line up, tush push. That would be hilarious.
Dude, if Nick Sirianni did that, I'd go, yep, that makes sense. Of course, it's not, you can't, they have to be in the position to do it. I know. But I know also that Nick Sirianni is petty like that. He just is. Him and Dan Campbell both, have a steel trap memory. Those things don't go away. But anyway, for as far as Brown and Devonta Smith and Barkley and Hurts go, You can't just play all of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing a single entry, is there really any way is there a right move if you're playing a single entry and you're trying to build a lineup today? Because there's so many different options in this game.
Yeah, and you can see here the Sims also really spreading it out. If we go to the captain spot, we've got 4 players in at least 10% of lineups. And then you still have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith in 8.7% apiece. So it's about as spread out as it could be in the captain spot with our exposures, and nobody showing up in more than 15% of lineups. And then you go ahead and you look at the flex at the high-end options. We're getting overweight to the field on Jalen Hurts, even with the field on Barkley, even with the field on Jacobs, slightly underweight to the field on Love. And then we come in slightly overweight to Brown, slightly underweight to Smith. But overall, we're pretty even in balance with a lot of these guys. So that's where it's just the personal preference starts to come in. And for me, I prefer Jalen Hurts over Jordan Love. I'm just picking one of the quarterback options because of the rushing upside. Jordan Love, you watch him play and you would think he has the ability to run. But then you look at his rushing numbers, Lofty, they don't exist. He doesn't zero
like to
rushing
run
upside at all. And that to me is a massive impediment in a game like this where he has to outscore a lot of other options. His season high for rushing yards is 28 this season. His season high for rushing yards last year was 23. He's got, I think it's like 2 career games with 20 plus rushing yards. This is not something he does. So I think that really, really caps Jordan Love relative to the other pay up options. So Jalen Hurts over Jordan Love for me as far as the quarterbacks go. And then I'm going to lean towards Barkley, like I said before, over Jacobs, Brown, and Devonta Smith. I still think he's the most talented of all those guys, even if the season hasn't gone his way.
I agree. I mean, the fact that you've seen no rushing from him at all, and he's not incapable of rushing. He's actually not incapable of rushing. He just doesn't rush. You see a lot of guys out there like Jordan Love. It's not that they can't. He just doesn't want to. And that's probably, if I had to guess, that's by design.
Yeah.
That is by design. There's a lot of players out there with, like CJ Stroud. Can CJ Stroud run? Yeah, he actually can. Yeah, CJ Stroud could rack up a 40-yard run and I'd go, that's nice. I wouldn't go, wow, I didn't know he could do that. There's a handful of Patrick Mahomes used to be that way, where when he'd run, you're like, damn, that guy's actually got some wheels. He's a good runner, but he never had to do it and he never wanted to do it. If you don't have to, they don't want him to. And I think that's just how it is with Jordan Love. As a matter of fact, Craig, that's actually how it's been with Jalen Hurts in specific games. There are games with Jalen Hurts where they just haven't run. Against Denver, he ran twice for 3 yards. Even recently, he hasn't run nearly as much. Now, for what it's worth, I fully agree with you that the rushing upside there is still significantly higher. Like he has 2 60-yard rushing games this year. You also have a guy that has 5 rushing touchdowns this year, and the tush push is essentially automatic once they get down near the goal line. So no denying that. Like at $1,000 difference, I definitely like Hurts more. And Jordan Love's just dealing with more injuries to the offense to begin with.
Yeah, Jordan Love has 0 rushing touchdowns. I should have framed that a little bit better because it's not necessarily the rushing yards themselves. It's just the ability to score fantasy points on the ground. So as far as Hurts, it's all the tush push that rushing upside comes from. It's not necessarily the yards, just his ability to score touchdowns with the tush push. Whereas Jordan Love, 0 rushing touchdowns this year, 1 rushing touchdown last year. It's just not something they do. They get down to the 1 yard line. It's Josh Jacobs running up the middle. The Eagles get to the 1 yard line. Maybe it's Barkley, but in all likelihood, it's going to be tush push with Jalen Hurts. So that's the kind of upside that Jordan Love just doesn't have that makes it hard for me to pick him over some of the other pay up options.
Yeah, no, I think we all knew what you meant. I knew what you meant. But I did want to specify that tush push is just, I mean, when you can just land an additional 6 or 12 fantasy points on 1 yard scores on any given game. Yeah. So I hear you. And you look at our captain ownership. If you could pull up captain ownership here, I'd love to take a look at what we're getting.
Really spread out. Really spread out.
It's spread out, but this is what I want to know from you. I don't think you're going to have any arguments getting to a decent amount of Jacobs at captain. I'm not. I actually like that. I told you guys why I think Jacobs, the volume should be there. He didn't seem bothered by that calf injury last week either, which to me is is a very important feature of his game. Like, if he was still dealing with that, I'd be a little bit worried. But he had actually a pretty decent game. He had over 5 yards per attempt. He also was targeted 5 times. I'm okay with that. And you also, that was a weird game too. Emmanuel Wilson, I thought maybe he'd get more work, but he didn't. He went back to kind of what he'd been doing. You may even see less from him in a really important game coming off that bad loss now. So I like Jacobs there. I like Hurts at captain always. I really like Barkley. I mean, right now, my 2 favorite captains in this game actually are Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley. I'd have Jalen Hurts in the conversation too, so I have no real arguments with the exposures. Outside of maybe I'd like a little bit more of all 3 of those guys. I want to know from you, though, at 11% Jordan Love, given everything you just said about him, would you be giving him a negative boost or capping that captain ownership now that he's essentially neck and neck with all of these other really high volume guys and a running quarterback who can score from the goal line?
Yeah, if this was right before lock, I would be going to Jordan Love. I'd be going to his captain exposure, and I would go max exposure, 0%.
Would you really?
Exposure to just favorites. I think it's very, very unlikely that he's the highest scoring player in this game with his lack of rushing upside.
So you go to 0.
Yeah, I'd go to 0. I think it's very, very unlikely with his lack of rushing upside that he's going to outscore these guys. Because what has to happen then, right? We're just taking the rushing yards off the table. So now you need well over 300 passing yards, unless this is just a super low scoring game. But in the game script, we're kind of expecting, and with all the highly talented skill position players in this game, what do we need from Jordan Love? We probably need 300 plus passing yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. And even then, the ball has to be really spread out. It can't go to any one guy, because if he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, this is a conversation EMAC and I had last night about the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers is, all right, Rodgers has no rushing upside. Let's say he throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's got to be spread out. If DK Metcalf has over 100 yards and a touchdown, and now all of a sudden he's outscoring Aaron Rodgers, that's the same issue here with Love without the rushing upside is, let's say that he goes out and has the 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. All right, well, what happens if Romeo Doubs catches 2 of the touchdowns? Because that's somebody who's been a red zone target for him. What happens if there's just other pay-up options that, like, what if Jalen Hurts has 2 tush-push touchdowns or something like that? To me, it's so unlikely that Jordan Love is going to be the winning captain/MVP option, and he's really popular in that spot. So I'd just rather play other guys.
I'll say this much, whether you agree with Greg or not, when you see something like this, you should know he's always going to tell you exactly what he's doing, whether it's a big stand or not. A lot of people would be wishy-washy here. They'd be like, I'd cap him maybe 5 or 7%. Greg takes him straight to 0. Appreciate that one way or the other. I do think you're reaching a little bit, though, on the 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, because if there was, in my opinion, if there was ever a quarterback right now who could do that and nobody else gets there as the optimal, it would be Jordan Love with no Tucker Kraft and no Jaden Reed. I mean, Luke Musgrave, Romeo Doubs is going to see a lot of Quinyon Mitchell, Savion Williams if he plays, Christian Watson. This team already spreads the ball around a remarkable amount, and now they've lost the number 1 target getter on the team. Well, sorry, number 1 producer. I don't know if Kraft or Doubs had more targets, but it feels like if there were, and for what it's worth, I don't want that much captain Jordan Love, but I do think this would be one of those times where he could get there. And if he did get there, actually spread the ball around to where no one single player ends up seeing the bulk of the production.
Yeah, I also think they're more likely to, just because of the situation with the pass catchers, I think they're probably more likely to just give the ball to Jacobs more.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, yeah, for me, I won't be playing Love at captain. This is also just a normal stance for me to not play rushing quarterbacks in the multiplier spot. It's something I just don't do.
James, they tried giving these targets to Savion, Wilson, etc. I think they forced Musgrave into the offense more. Listen, Musgrave was drafted the same year as Tucker Kraft, and he was drafted ahead of him. Let's not forget. Tucker Kraft, Packers do this a lot. They drafted Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones in the same year, and Aaron Jones was several rounds after Jamal Williams. And who ended up having the better year, better career? Aaron Jones. So this happens a lot with them. They take a shot on multiple guys, and one of them just ends up being the better option. Hell, didn't they draft Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs in the same year?
It's possible. I don't remember. It's definitely possible, though.
I'm sure there's a Packers fan that can tell me. They had one year where they drafted a handful of wide receivers, and I think Dobbs was towards the end, or like fourth round or something like that. But I like Josh Jacobs here plenty. You could also just see Josh Jacobs get a decent amount of work through the air. That's not impossible either. We look at him as a running, as just like a downhill guy. That's not true though. He has plenty of games where he has like 4 receptions for 50 yards, and that would be a huge boon for his production tonight.
Yeah, so for reference, I think a lot of us think of Saquon Barkley as a capable pass catcher. Well, Saquon Barkley this year has 28 targets for 159 yards. Josh Jacobs this year, he has 28 targets for 204 yards. So the exact same amount of targets, but Josh Jacobs has turned that into 50 more receiving yards than Saquon Barkley has. So, he's been a serviceable option in the passing game. He's on pace for close to 500 receiving yards.
Pretty crazy, right? Also, I mean, he can get it done, and he has. So the other thing about Jacobs, and we're going to dive right now into like a lot of these value plays because I know we spent a lot of time on this, but this is one of those odd slates where I feel like it's kind of necessary. Jacobs, the only player with more opportunities inside the 10 and at the goal line. The only other player in the league this year is Jonathan Taylor. Josh Jacobs is going to get all of those. Barkley can be vultured by Hurts. So that's how I like to look at this one. As far as value goes, I wouldn't necessarily say Goddard is value here. He's not. He's mid-range, but this guy has 7 touchdowns on the year. They're using him in very, very unique ways and in goal-to-go situations because they know teams are keying in on Hurts and Barkley there, hit him with like little shovels. He has 3 of those on the season, 3 like weird shovel passes for touchdowns. I like Goddard in that mid-range. And I think, probably guys like, we have to see if Matthew Golden plays. He was limited on Thursday and then didn't practice on Friday. Usually that's kind of an ominous sign going into games like this. What do we think about Romeo Doubs today? It's not an easy matchup for him at all, but you have to think that Jordan Love is going to be looking his way pretty frequently. I may kind of ignore the matchup just based on the fact that he's clearly the number one.
The only issue I have with Romeo Doubs is, while I do agree with you, he's the number one, he's kind of expensive and he's popular. So at $8K, he is more popular than, let me sort here by the price. So at $8K, he's more popular than Devonta Smith, and he's more popular than A.J. Brown. And then in the captain spot, he's 11% owned, which is the 4th most popular captain on the entire slate. So at an $8,000 price tag for Romeo Doubs, I also think he's not somebody who's suited to be a number 1 overall wide receiver. He's just kind of forced into that role right now because of some of the injuries to the Packers pass catchers. But the real issue I have with Romeo Doubs is his ownership and his price tag. I think both of them are a little bit too high. I don't have an issue getting to him. I would just rather be a little bit underweight to the field too, and maybe take some shots on some of the other Packers pass catchers and see how that might end up going for today. Because I do think there's other guys. I think he's a very high floor, but I think there's other guys like Christian Watson, for example, that have a higher ceiling than Romeo Doubs.
Perfectly reasonable stance. And it's a tough spot. It's not all matchup, but yeah, he's $8K. You pay an additional $1,000 for Brown or Devonta Smith. Who's the better value though? And it's not like a trick question by any stance or by any stretch. Like I think a guy like Goddard at 7,400, his production has kind of been all over the place, but he's also been remarkably consistent because he finds the end zone. He's scored in 5 of his last 6 games, which is wild. Is that sustainable? No, I think he's actually a little bit overpriced based on the touchdown production that we've seen this season. And, we're slightly under the field on him. That's not wait, is that 20? Oh, we're a decent amount under the field. Is that 29 and 19 on Goddard?
So let's see. We've got Yes.
So yeah, I kind of get it at that price point. He should probably be 6,500 or so in that range. Because you look at the targets, you look at the volume of targets. He has 3 targets in each of his last 2 games. It just so happens that last game, 2 of those 3 targets were touchdowns. And, I think that's kind of tough in a weird, cold game like this where I could see him leaning on the run. I'd almost be more inclined to get to more kickers. I think the kickers actually look good in this game, both Brandon McManus, and I know there's some controversy in Green Bay, dealing with some of him not being healthy and him missing kicks and stuff like that. But I don't really, Matt LaFleur put an end to that. And then Jake Elliott is just another one of these guys that he's a pretty good kicker. And he hasn't had a ton of opportunities this year, but I don't hate it. And I don't hate the defenses. I know when you've got a lot of talented players, Greg, especially on the Eagles side because they're healthier, people aren't going to tend to want to do this. But the Packers still have a very good pass rush. They still have a good secondary. It is also possible that this game just doesn't see a lot of scoring in both defenses, or one defense ends up being optimal. Wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah,
Cold night too.
I was going to say, I prefer the kickers to the defenses. Jake Elliott showing up in 33% of lineups. We'll see what the ownership looks like later on in the day, but right now we've got the Packers projected for 21% ownership and showing up in 13% of lineups. I don't think they're going to be this popular, but if they actually are north of 20% owned, I'm not going to be super interested in the Packers just because of some of the things we talked about at the top of the show, which is the Eagles and Jalen Hurts tend to be a little bit conservative on offense unless they absolutely have to. Then you get the game like 2 weeks ago, not last week because they were on the bye, but 2 weeks ago against the Vikings, where Jalen Hurts is just throwing bombs all downfield, and they were racking up some really big individual plays. But more often than not, you're seeing games where Jalen Hurts throws like 25 times. It's a lot of rushing attempts. The pass attempts he does have are low A dots, and it's just hard for defense to score very many fantasy points under that kind of scenario. So if the Packers are truly going to be north of 20% owned, I'm not super interested. I prefer some of the defenses when they're lower owned, which is something that our sims do push out a lot. When you see defenses that are like 10 to 12% owned, they show up in 20+% of lineups. But we're seeing the inverse here with the Packers and their projected ownership. But once again, I'm not totally sold this is what the ownership actually is going to be later in the day.
Yeah, that's fair. For what it's worth, Jalen Hurts is a high A dot quarterback, but he's also not one to take a ton of well, it's not that. He's just been super accurate on the deep ball. Like he has the 1, 2, 3, 4. He has like the 5th highest A dot in the league.
All right, fair enough. It's more to me the volume of attempts downfield. Though,
I agree. He does not want to throw the ball. Yeah. They don't want to. They're not. He's never going to throw the ball 45 times.
Yeah, if he was taking regularly a handful of those shots downfield as opposed to 1 or 2, like he picks his spots really well. He's good at managing games. This undersells how good Jalen Hurts is, but he really is the best game manager in the entire NFL, in my opinion. The problem with that, as far as it goes to opposing defenses, is when he's so selective about taking those shots, what ends up happening is there just aren't opportunities for defenses to score fantasy points.
Yeah, you're right. Like when you take guys like Drake May and Darnold out of the equation, who have been just insane on deep balls this year, unsustainably, but also really good, Hurts has thrown 6 touchdowns to no interceptions on deep passes. And it speaks to what you're saying here. It's that usually when Hurts misses a deep ball, it's because he overthrows somebody, And then if he doesn't overthrow him, the opponent or the defender still has to contend with A.J. Brown on an underthrown ball or Devontae Smith, both of those guys who are great on contested catches. That you have that working for you as well. So, yeah, it's just really difficult for me. I want to talk about some of these cheap options here.
Yeah.
Before we do, though, probably a good time for us to shout out, Greg, some of the winners from yesterday. $200,000 from Winning 19. Can't thank you guys enough from Paul Winford. $200,000 in the NFL Sunday Million. By the way, one lineup in there. And then you had, look at all these other. 3rd place in the huddle. there's another one. First place in the first down. Those are tough contests. I think that was the smaller one, but still took down, the 20K first down on the early slate. Hell yeah. Tricky, there's another second place finish on FanDuel. Thanks for the great research and tools from Jonathan. And we had another one, Charles, who I know watches our show a lot. He doesn't have the avatar, but he was in the comments on Twitter when people were asking him questions saying, the only data I use is Stokastic. He took down 35K last night as well, Greg. So a big night for a lot of Stokastic users, man.
Yeah, and the only reason this would have been our third Millie Maker winner of the year, the only reason it wasn't is because FanDuel's Millie Maker doesn't pay out $1 million to first place. But he did win the flagship contest over on FanDuel
with one lineup.
With one lineup. That's crazy.
Which is absolutely insane. You guys want to get access to the tools, you know what to do. There could not be a simpler process. The link is in the description. Simply click it. Sign up with any of our sportsbook partners. Here's what you do. You scroll down, you click claim offer on any of these, any sports books, or if you're in non-legal betting states, you have all these pick'em sites as well. You've got Onyx on top of that. It's a sweepstakes book available in 40 plus states. Click claim offer. After you do that, just sign up. You have to click claim offer. We can't track it. Deposit, usually it's a $5 or $10 minimum deposit, and place a bet, or of course, a pick'em entry. The moment that settles, just take a screenshot of it, of the welcome email and your first settled bet, and then email us, Ron, over at support@stokastic.com with those screenshots. Let us know what books you signed up with or what pick'em sites, and let us know what sports you want, right? If you want NFL, do it. If you signed up on Caesars and on Onyx and you wanted 2 months of NFL, let Ron know. Say, hey, Ron, I'm trying to run this all the way through the new year. But yeah, let him know. 2 of NFL. You want to run an NBA and an NFL for the core sims? Go ahead and do that as well. Just let him know what it is. But in case you were wondering, there's no better way to get in at a great price. And I wish I could find the one. There was an awesome screenshot yesterday, Greg. I don't know where it is. I'd have to find it. But it was essentially someone saying, like, thank you for allowing, lower stakes players like myself to get access to these tools. You guys have never made it easier. And I saw that and I woke up to it this morning and I kind of just nodded my head thinking, yeah, this is awesome. This is the way we want it to be. Because the core monthly NFL package is $130. In this instance, if you sign up for one book, you're getting it for $5 or $10. If you sign up for 3 books, let's say you spend $30, that's almost $400 if you were to run 3 straight subs for $30. It's just hands down the best way to do it. And you're getting access to all of the tools we have for these sports.
Absolutely. And you guys are seeing on screen here that people are winning in big dollar contests. People are winning in big contests that are like the marquee contests. And I mean, we just had somebody win with one single lineup. People are winning in the quarter arcades, the dime times, the dollar contests. So people winning in all different kinds of formats, all different kinds of dollar amounts. So this is the best way to get yourself into the tools at a very affordable price point. Because what's a better price point than free?
Yeah, man. Absolutely. All right. Let's get back to the value here. I want to pick your brain on some of these cheap options for a second. So it's when you start getting down here to the Grant Calcaterras and the Malik Heats and Calcaterra is a little bit different. Let's start with the backup running backs. You have Emmanuel Wilson and then you have Tank Bigsby who had, Barkley had 150, but Tank Bigsby had 105 in that last game when Barkley went down and they were up by a lot of points, or 104 on 9 attempts, by the way. What do we make of Bigsby here looking like he is the number 2 in Philly and will spell Saquon Barkley? Doesn't mean a lot of work, but if this does end up being a heavy ground game, it's possible that Emmanuel Wilson and Tank Bigsby, at the very least, we should be talking about these guys.
The ownership on Emmanuel Wilson is crazy to me. Like, I get it. We have to roster cheap guys today because of all the reasons we talked about at the top. There's so many good spend up options that this is just a good slate for stars and scrubs. Because or else you're foregoing, Barkley, Love, Jacobs, Hurts. You have to roster cheap guys to get up to those expensive studs that we talked about for a big portion of the show. So I understand why people are clicking Emmanuel Wilson, but I don't get why he is so much more popular than all the other spend down options on the slate. He's showing up in 28% of lineups. He certainly warrants exposure, but I also want to find some other cheap guys to get to who are not Emmanuel Wilson to differentiate from the field a little bit, because or else this is going to lead to a lot of dupe lineups with him being 28% owned. One of them potentially could be Tank Bigsby, because like you said, Lofty, we did see him play a little bit of an expanded role. Now, there were some extenuating circumstances. The game was not competitive against the Giants. Barkley also briefly left the game with a hamstring injury. It looked like it was potentially going to be severe. Ended up being nothing really in the long run. But even if I don't think Tank Bigsby is going to play nearly the same workload as he did against the Giants, he should not be 1/10 of the ownership of
no
Emmanuel
chance.
Wilson.
No way. I could not agree more with you. Also, Tank Bigsby's pretty good. So it's not just like it's total scrub back there. I actually think Tank Bigsby's a nice player. I like him. And that isn't to say that he's going to, carve out a significant role in this backfield. But could you get like a 5-carry game from Bigsby today? I think so. Also, the other thing is, what if we are right? And I'm not going to put you in. I'm not going to attribute what I was saying to you but if I am right and they do go with a heavy ground attack for the Eagles, we've seen times where they've run the ball like 30 times in a game. And if that's the case, you're not giving Barkley all 30 of those in this spot. You don't really need to. You want to keep this guy healthy, and you like what you have in Tank Bigsby, then Tank Bigsby might actually get, enough carries. Is it unlikely? Of course it is, but it's a showdown slate. And like Greg said, you're going to need to find value when you have all of this chalk. So, yeah, I think Bigsby, do you think this stands? Do you think the ownership stands here throughout the day on Wilson and Bigsby? Because if that's the case, how do you not just get to more Bigsby?
Probably not, for multiple reasons. Number one, we've got news we're still waiting on. Most notably, will Matthew Golden end up playing or not? And just things like that are going to move around some of the value a lot. Because let's say that Golden ends up sitting today. He's not projected individually for a lot of ownership, but then all of a sudden it's going to bring more cheap pass catchers from the Packers into play. Like all of a sudden Savion Williams starts to project better and he pulls more ownership in that kind of scenario. You would also start to see Dontavian Wicks project better in that kind of scenario. So just because of injuries, I do think things will end up moving around, which does make it, a little bit hard because we're only working with the information that we have this morning. But I just can't imagine he's going to be this popular at nearly 30%. It seems like so much.
Yeah, it does. You honestly may end up in a situation tonight. That's why you guys want to hang around for Live Before Lock. We will have, the cool thing about that is since we start an hour before the game kicks off, we'll actually have the full injury. We'll have the full inactives list for both teams. Super helpful. You might just end up being in a situation here where first of all, we don't know if Golden's going to play. We don't know if Wicks is going to play. It's possible. And also, we don't know if Savion Williams is going to play either. You could just be staring down the barrel of a Malik Heath chalk game. It sounds insane. I understand that. But if Wicks, Golden, and Savion Williams all don't play, Jaden Reed's on the IR, Tucker Kraft's on the IR, you're going to have to be looking at more Malik Heath. It's inevitable. You're going to have to look at more Luke Musgrave, even though this is a tough spot for him. It's a tough spot for all these guys. We're going to learn a lot once we get this Packers inactive, Greg. They have 3 guys who I understand Savion Williams and Dontavian Wicks may not be full household names for a lot of people, even Matthew Golden up until this point, outside of the fact that he was drafted in the first round. But all of these guys are super important today with Jaden Reed on the IR and Kraft on the IR.
Yeah, and this is where the ownership is just too big of a gap for me. We know that the Packers pass catchers are shorthanded. Emmanuel Wilson is projected for 28% ownership. Even if Golden plays, he's only 8% owned. Williams is 4% owned. Wicks is 13% owned. I'd rather take my shots on those guys from the Packers at the depressed ownership compared to Wilson.
Do me a favor. Talk through these cheap guys. 2 seconds.
Yeah. So here's what we're looking at for the Packers as far as the pass catchers go. So we just touched on Emmanuel Wilson and him being, 28% owned. We've got Matthew Golden questionable to play. Here's some of the snap counts for the Packers pass catchers last week. So we got 42% of snaps to Malik Heath, We got Christian Watson, who I know he's not on the cheap end, but I think this is notable. 2 games ago, he played 56% of snaps. Last week, he played 66% of snaps. So I think we could be seeing a much bigger workload for Christian Watson at $6,200. I think there's a possibility that he's unrestricted and gets in a full workload, which in that case, our projection on him probably goes from like 8.26 fantasy points to something like 10 or 11. Because just based on how his workload has trended and how high leverage this game is, I think we're getting more increased work out of Christian Watson. 56% of snaps, 66% of snaps. I think we're looking at like 75 to 80% of snaps for tonight's game, which is essentially going to be a full workload for him in that case. But then we have to try to figure out who of the lower end guys is going to end up playing more. And I think it's going to be Malik Heath. The reason I lean towards Heath over Savion Williams, who is 2,000. We've got Heath. Where's Heath? Heath is 3,000. Here's the difference in snaps between these two last game. We saw Heath play 42% of snaps to Williams playing 19% of snaps. And that to me is an indication that he's just slightly ahead of Williams on the depth chart. And it's kind of been the case the entire season. Week 8, 33% of snaps to Heath, 19% to Savion Williams. Week 7, 41% of snaps to Heath, 7% to Savion Williams. So if I'm going to be going cheap to one of the Packers pass catchers, and even if we were to see like Golden be out, for example, I'm leaning towards Heath right now over Savion Williams. And Heath right now, we only have projected for 2% ownership. So that's another low-cost guy who I like to be a little bit different with.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think he's going to get opportunities one way or the other. I also think Christian Watson might just be the biggest boom bust spot on this slate because he's a downfield threat. His ADOT in the 2 games he's played is 23 yards. If he connects on a big one, it's possible. Then he just ends up being a nice play here. But to kind of recap what we've gone over in these spots, kickers look pretty good today. I'm not afraid to get the defenses, but I do like the ground game. Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley, a captain. We both prefer Jalen Hurts over Jordan Love just because of the fantasy point production on the ground from somebody like him. Last thing I wanted to look at with you, Greg, here is do we have any not low owned, I guess you could say low owned, contrarian options at the captain spot that we're getting exposure to?
Let's see. So if we go to the captain position, the answer is not really. There's some guys who show up in a couple of lineups at low ownership, but not anything that we're massively exposed to. Of the players we have more than 10%. Keep in mind, I did do that exposure cap to Love before. Love was in 11% of lineups. That just got allocated out to some other guys here. But not really. Jake Elliott shows up in some lineups. McManus does, the Eagles defense, but it's all a pretty small amount of exposure to these guys. One thing I do think is interesting to do in a couple lineups, though, Lofty, is punt it captain. And then you get a scenario, maybe you get a cheap captain, like Malik Heath goes out and scores like 8 fantasy points. You get 12 out of him in the captain spot. But then if a bunch of the spend up options go for like 25 to 30 fantasy points, you probably need all of them in the same lineup. And you won't be able to do that if you have one of them in the captain because of the price points. So if you want to build a lineup for an offensive shootout, I think it makes sense to go to maybe like a Dallas Goedert or actually Goedert might even be a little bit too expensive for that. Maybe it would have to be like a Luke Musgrave or a Malik Heath in the captain / MVP spot on FanDuel.
I have no problem with that at all. I would also say in the mid-range, Christian Watson at captain. Total boom or bust option. Mm-hmm. But for a guy that has the ADOT that he does, and knowing that you have significant injuries to this team, also knowing that, yeah, he's returning from injury. So I assume he's going to be on, I guess, somewhat of a limit, but he did play 66% of snaps last game. He's now, 3 games removed from that. Well, a lot longer than that. He was on, he was out most of the season, but, he's played 2 games. He played 36 and then 43 snaps. Realistic to assume that he could go out there and play a full allotment of snaps today, which 66% for a Green Bay Packers receiver is actually a lot. Dobbs is the only one that plays a ton. But yeah, I could see them actually concentrate things a little bit more around their top guys now that, Tucker Kraft is out. and you still have Jaden Reed on the IR. So Christian Reed in that kind of boom bust, high ceiling, super low floor spot, 9,300 at captain is not all that crazy to me. I'd be okay getting a little bit of him today.
Yeah, and this was something that I had touched on when you got up, but I don't think Christian Watson's going to see much of a restriction today. He's second on the team in targets the last couple of games. He had 4 targets 2 weeks ago. The only pass catcher with more was Romeo Dobbs. He had 4 targets Tucker Kraft 2 weeks ago also had more. But last week, 4 targets. Tucker Kraft had 3. Romeo Dobbs had 10. So Dobbs, while he was really dominating the targets, it was still the second most workload for Christian Watson. Like you mentioned, when he does get targets, they generally come downfield. And now he's further removed from that injury. I think we're seeing him play like 75 to 80% of snaps today, which would essentially be a full workload for him.
Look, I'm not going to argue on that. I expect something very similar. If he was good last week with no setbacks, then why would he not be good this week? You know, that's kind of the way I see it. So I'm with you, man. Anyway, how about this fantastic comment that we just got from Sharon in chat as well? How about this? What's up, fellas? Thanks to Tails, I hit for 600 on Fanatic Sportsbook. You guys are truly the best in the business. Thank you for all you folks, for all those folks in the betting and DFS world. Hell yeah, man. Love to see that. I assume a lot of those bets on Tails you got for free. You know,
Yep.
there are a lot of like premium subs out there. You know, you can like Ben has one, Eric has one, and a lot of these guys that you see on the leaderboard are also going to have those. So make sure that you're checking those out if you ever wanted to take it a step further. There's no doubt about it. This dude Supreme Juice hit a monster yesterday. I saw it. It was like a 69 to 1 or something. Or no, actually, was it him or who was it?
Yeah, go to the long shot.
I'm trying to remember who it was. I want to shout him out so people can go check him out. It was, man, that's going to drive me nuts. I'll have to figure it out.
Supreme Juice has been all over the leaderboards the last couple of weeks. Like I think
it was Supreme Juice. It was. I just found it.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're right. It was Supreme Juice. Pretty absurd that this dude's just absolutely hammering. But you can go and find the people you want. Go into your picks feed. For example, here's everybody I'm following. You go left to right, pull it up. Like what's Greg got for today? What's Josh got for today? Go in here. You can one-click tail these bets. Okay. So if I wanted to bet it on DraftKings, boom, click that and I'm in. That's it. Download the app over on Tails if you haven't done so. We have the link in the description. You can download it right from the description or go to tails.bet. Follow the people you want. Follow me, Greg, everybody else. Check the leaderboards out. See who's crushing it and take it from there, man. And of course, if you guys love the Tails app, like Sharon, for example, if you're loving the app, we're not going to ask you, obviously, for any money, nothing like that. The one thing I would ask, if you're loving it, go hit us up in the App Store or on the Google Play Store. Leave us a review and a rating, 5-star review, a rating. That goes further for us than anything right now. So appreciate you guys who have already done it. But if you're liking it and you found it helpful, entertaining, whatever it may be, even just searching around to find some spots that you love, hit us with a rating and review in the Tails app. That's going to go longer for us and further for us than anything else you guys could do. But shout out to all you guys who killed it yesterday.
And make sure to turn on notifications too. Scroll down a little bit, Lofty. Because I've posted
Tails? Sure.
Yeah. Because I've posted 2 bets so far. Oh, no, I've posted 3 bets. So scroll down a little bit more. There. So look at the Norman Powell bet. If you go press tail that, because that one had a lot of line movement, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so I posted that this morning under 32.5 PRA. The best available line now is 27.5 PRA. So make sure you turn on notifications because you want to get that bet before the line moves, not after the line moves, because obviously there's a massive difference between betting under 32.5 PRA and under 27.5 PRA, and that could finish like 25 or 26.5 PRA. So
absolutely.
Yeah, turn on notifications, and then when we post a bet, it's going to get sent right to your phone. You'll get the best available line.
Yep, good call. I did not have the greatest betting. It was my first down Sunday since early September. However, the Nico Collins prop, just to Greg's point, I posted this Wednesday night, Greg, for a Sunday game. And I know a lot of people don't like to bet that early in the week. This was 56.5, closed at 66.5. So like Greg said, you should definitely take advantage of something like that. And make sure to get them early. Did this grade for me? Yeah, there we go. Grade. Should have been +1 unit, but whatever. Anyway, check it out, download the app, hit us up. So, final thoughts on this one before we get out of here, Greg. I think we've covered mostly everything from the value to the kickers to the high-priced guys to the captain spots, even some contrarian captains. Once we get the enactors for Live Before Lock, it's going to tell us a lot. You got to stick around later tonight for Live Before Lock after the NBA show. But put a bow on this one. Anything we're missing?
Yeah, just make sure to watch Live Before Lock tonight. This is a game with a little bit more uncertainty than we normally see for a Monday Night Football game where we don't know the status of Matthew Golden. We don't have a firm report on if Christian Watson's restrictions are going to be released. And tonight on NFL Live Before Lock, that's something that Spags and Loughran are going to have covered for you guys. So make sure to check that out tonight. And then also, just normal, like the video, subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of the day. We'll catch you back Live Before Lock tonight. NBA tonight. Josh already knocked out the strategy show for NBA. So if you missed that, circle back and find it. Any questions, you can always hit Greg and me up. You can DM us. You can leave a comment down below, whatever it may be. And we'll see you back here for the next one. Bye-bye.